Hi there, Kendra Tolbert here. I'm a registered dietitian and yoga teacher, and I specialize in women's health and fertility. And today I have a very special interview to share with you. I just wrapped up an interview with Hannah and Behzad of Tend Prenatal. They actually founded Tend Prenatal, and they were gracious enough to share so much information, not just about Tend Prenatal, but about their own story and about some tips that you can use to help you choose the best prenatal for you. So I know that you're going to love them and this interview and their very special guest. So we're going to jump right into it. I hope you enjoy. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm super excited to chat with the two of you. I've kind of gotten to know you via social media, but this is the first time we're chatting. So I'd love it if you would introduce yourselves to the viewers.
I'm Hannah, and I, along with my husband, Behzad, co-founded Tend. We are based in Los Angeles, and this whole thing started from a very personal story.
Ooh, I would love to dive into that story. So can you tell us, what was the catalyst behind Tend?
Well, Hannah and I wanted to start a family around 2020 in the pandemic. She was taking prenatal vitamins, as many women do and should in that season of life. And I'm watching her struggle taking those pills every morning.
Yeah. So I've always had a lifelong aversion to pills. I could never do it. And so when it came time to take these prenatal vitamins, I was really struggling because they're huge, they're smelly, they're just generally unpleasant.
And I'm watching Hannah struggle and wondering, why does it have to be this way? She brought home all these bottles. We had probably 20 or 30 prenatals at our house at one time. And I was looking at the labels, and my background is in nutrition. Actually, my PhD is in human nutrition. And I happen to study how prenatal diet affects infant brain development. So looking at the ingredients of what Hannah was bringing home and even just struggling with, I wasn't happy with really any of the options that were out there. And even more than that, I wanted to see if we could turn Hannah's struggle and what turns out to be many women's struggle, about 51% of women in the US struggle swallowing pills, turn that struggle into something that she could enjoy, into something she would look forward to and not literally dread every morning.
Yeah, we had a long pregnancy journey as well. So I was taking prenatals for many years, and we experienced 2 losses along the way, but now we have a very healthy 9-month-old, and she is she's a handful, but she's a great joy. And so it's been an amazing experience kind of birthing our own baby along with the business in parallel.
So yeah, I just saw what Hannah was struggling with, and I wanted to make something that was delicious and enjoyable and more natural.
I love that story. Thank you so much for sharing it. So this isn't just you saw a need, this was you were experiencing a need and you were definitely seeing the need in real time. And then you realized this could help lots of people. And I think that's a beautiful way for anything to get started. So I've actually had a chance to try the bars and they're delicious. They're so good. They delight me.
That is so good. Good to hear.
I'm a huge fan. So one of the questions that comes up quite often when I'm talking to people about prenatals is they're wondering if it causes nausea or if it's more so being pregnant makes you nauseous already. And so then maybe the prenatal is exacerbating it. Can you talk to both your experience with that and then kind of what we know from the science around that?
Mm-hmm.
So from my personal experience, I did experience a lot of nausea, and in the first trimester, it's just really difficult because you're feeling nauseated, but then you also need to be eating. Like for me, I had to eat every 2 hours. And so that would actually help my nausea. So it's kind of this chicken and egg, you don't want to eat, but then eating helps. So for me, the nausea peaked around 8 to 10 weeks. And so I think prenatal pills always kind of created a dreaded sensation in my body. And so I think with this product, at least, you can eat it because it's made of food. So I don't know if there's a scientific basis behind some nutrients that are found in those pills or powders or gummies that make you feel sicker. because a lot of women who are now taking 10 have said, oh, my prenatals like made me sick, but this didn't make me sick. So is there science behind that?
I mean, I think in general, taking a vitamin on an empty stomach is something I wouldn't strongly recommend. A lot of prenatal pills and even standard non-prenatal vitamins will say can be taken with or without food. And I think that's, of course, sounds very convenient. Like you can take it on the go, you don't have to have it with a meal. But the way that nutrients are absorbed and work best with our body is, of course, no surprise. With food, nutrients are found in foods, and often the food will act as a buffer to help those nutrients be absorbed more optimally and more gently. So one of the most important nutrients in the prenatal stage is iron. And so there have been some studies that show that iron, when taken on an empty stomach, can cause, or like you said, Kendra, often just exacerbate the nausea that's already there. So most prenatals do contain iron, whether it's a pill or a gummy. And on an empty stomach, that can be one culprit that exacerbates that nausea. So we always recommend to people to take a prenatal with food. That's how you absorb vitamins better anyways, and it can help curb that nausea. And of course, we happen to make a prenatal that is food, the purpose of which being, like Hannah said, for many women, hopefully reducing their nausea. You can't take it on an empty stomach because it provides nutrients, macronutrients, fiber, protein that all help to curb those nausea-like symptoms. But iron is sort of the main culprit. And I think empty stomach plus iron plus pre-existing pregnancy nausea equals really tough pill to swallow. So I think those are some of the recommendations around that.
Ah, that makes tons of sense. So it's kind of this perfect storm that would actually make the nausea even worse, potentially. Awesome. So you actually touched on something that someone did ask. One of the community questions was, is it safe to take a prenatal while taking an iron supplement? I definitely think this may be something that they want to talk to their provider about a bit more, but can you give us some general guidelines around the idea of taking like an isolated nutrient along with a prenatal vitamin?
Yeah, I think like you said, Kendra, talking to your healthcare provider is best practices here because they know you and they've often done your blood work. Many women in pregnancy are anemic. If they don't start out anemic, they're anemic by the time they're in the third trimester. Some studies have shown up to 20% of women in their third trimester are anemic, which means they just have low blood iron levels. So this is why iron is so important, and many women will even be prescribed a separate, like you suggested, iron supplement for their pregnancy journey. The daily recommended intake for iron jumps for women from 18 pre-pregnancy to 27. So that's 50% more iron necessary in pregnancy. And that can be really hard to achieve, even if you're taking a supplement. Most prenatals have 50% to nearing 100% daily value of iron, but iron is notoriously poorly absorbed. Not only from supplements, but even from a lot of foods, iron isn't absorbed that well.
Yeah, no. Oh,
I'm gonna go off camera and can you hear the baby?
I can, but it's super sweet.
Okay.
Love it.
It's like, what about me? What about me?
I love the coos in the background.
Should I say it?
Lovely.
You can have her say hi. Yeah.
Okay.
Now you want to be on TV?
Hi, little one. Okay, wait. I was not ready for. Your kid is adorable. Did you know?
We're biased, so.
Oh my goodness. Hello, face. Okay, I'm mesmerized. So, what were we talking about?
We were in the middle of iron.
Oh yeah.
My goodness. Yes. Okay. So we were talking about iron and isolated nutrients and the importance of having a conversation with your provider. I think what you mentioned about the provider
Completing labs was a really important part, because even if you have a history of a deficiency, the amount that you were given may have corrected it, and you may need a maintenance dose. You may no longer need additional supplements. So it really is important that you're consistently being assessed. And also, if you're taking a supplement and the deficiency isn't corrected, like, we need to know why. And that's really something that you would have to talk to your provider about. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
I think there are even ways to sort of hack the iron question. Like, we've known for more than 100 years that iron is best absorbed when there's vitamin C around, which is really interesting. So if you're having something that's iron rich, steak, protein, meat, which is one of the greatest sources of iron in animal products, then having some fruits and vegetables, something citrus, which is loaded with vitamin C, can help that iron be absorbed, which is, again, what comes back to taking that supplement with a food, with a glass of orange juice, which is what Hannah would take her prenatals with before tend. Or in our case, our iron is a food-based iron, and we also have vitamin C intentionally in the bar to help with that iron absorption. So the absorption is already low for iron. So what can you do to try to enhance that? Taking it in the context of a meal can be really helpful.
I think this kind of touches on what makes Tend so different, and possibly what makes Tend, I would say, a superior product, is the fact that it is food-based, and because there is this synergy of nutrients. So can you speak a bit more to the benefits of a food-based product like Tend?
Sure. I mean, we have been consuming food as a human species for a very long time. And it was really only recently, like in the past century, where we started to fortify foods and then add vitamins to pills and powders and gummies. This was very recent. Hi, Kendra. So we are used to, and our bodies have evolved to extract nutrients from food as they're found in food. This means that the structures of those nutrients and the receptors that are in our bodies, they fit hand in glove. So often the structures of nutrients in a pill are different and meant to optimize shelf stability rather than mimic the structure of what's found in a food. Often you can't mimic it in a lab, what's found in a food. So what's unique about Tend is, number one, the structures of the nutrients, since they're all food derived, are identical to the ones our bodies are used to absorbing. That can't always be said for pills. Second, like you said, is synergy, which is where food is greater than a sum of its parts. So to take a meal and to remove the individual nutrients and put them in a pill, we know intuitively is different than to eat the meal as a whole. And so this is where things like iron and vitamin C together boost iron absorption. Even the presence of something like fat, of course, is necessary for fat-soluble vitamins to be absorbed. So when the prenatal pill says can be taken with or without food, sure, it can be, but you need fat to absorb vitamins A, D, E, and K, otherwise they won't be well absorbed. So we've included healthy sources of fat from nuts, from seeds, to help those fat-soluble vitamins be absorbed. Minerals are best absorbed when there's fiber around. So we have a source of fiber from root vegetables that helps the 12 or 13 minerals that are in Tend be absorbed. So it wasn't just that Hannah's struggle with a pill meant I wanted to make something that was edible, but it happened that these edible ingredients from nuts and seeds and root vegetables further enhance nutrient absorption because they mimic what the body's used to for tens of thousands of years, seeing in a food and then absorbing optimally in a food. So it's the structures that are unique and also how they play with each other that delivers the nutrition that we think is also superior to what science can put in a magic pill.
There's also the issue of safety, because synthetic vitamins have only been around, for the past less than 100 years, and so there's still studies coming out about the difference between certain synthetic vitamins versus their natural real food corollaries, like choline bitartrate. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, choline is a really important nutrient in pregnancy, and only recently have prenatals begun to put more choline in their pills or powders or what have you, the form. A study came out in 2019 that looked at natural choline from foods, and the best place to get choline from food is actually eggs. It's also found in things like broccoli, leafy greens, etc. Ours is from sunflower seeds. The choline intent is from seeds. Comparing natural food choline to choline found in supplements, and that type of choline is called choline bitartrate. So again, structurally sort of different than the choline found in foods, which is found as part of a lipid or a fat called phosphatidylcholine. So that's as nerdy as I'll get, but structure matters here. Because what ended up being found was that the choline bitartrate, when it was given to patients in this clinical trial, increased levels of a metabolite called TMAO, which causes blood cells and platelets to be more sticky. So sticky platelets lead to reduced blood flow to organs and to tissues. Sticky platelets like TMAO levels rising in other studies have been shown to be increased risk for heart disease and high blood pressure. So choline bitartrate, which we innocently thought was just a synthetic form of choline, just like the form found in foods, doesn't act so much like the form found in foods in how it's metabolized. So even if the structure on the surface level is really similar, your body takes these nutrients and it transforms them chemically to make them usable and absorbable. And in that process, the choline bitartrate made this byproduct TMAO, which is, I would say, dangerous. Like we should avoid TMAO. In studies of mice, it was found that TMAO caused mice that were having babies to have less babies, reduced blood flow to the placenta in the mice that were given choline bitartrate and had elevated TMAO. So the last thing we want to do is be alarmist. It all comes back to our philosophy of, generally speaking, we've been having foods be the way we nourish our bodies for thousands of years. And these new forms of nutrients in synthetic pills aren't as well studied. So we generally lean toward safest, do no harm approach. And that's where sunflower seeds are, we know, exceptionally safe. And so that was the form of choline that we put into our product.
I love that. I love how much thought and intention went behind what you've created. And it makes me wonder, are you seeing that much thought and intention put behind some of the products that Hannah tried early on? Like when you actually looked at these labels, were there times where you looked at those labels and you were like, this is clearly not a well-designed product?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to speak to the whole field. I think there's a spectrum of quality and a spectrum of thoughtfulness in science. I do think we've experienced, and you probably know this, Kendra, like sort of a renaissance in the prenatal world in so many ways. Like, not only are people more aware of what's in their prenatal vitamin, people are approaching this season of life much more holistically. I know this is a passion of yours from your work, right? Like spiritual, physical, like communal, like body work, breath work. And I think those are really important in approaching a season that can be as demanding as the prenatal season and as taxing and trying for many people, even though sometimes that's unspoken. This is a challenging season for a lot of families.
And I think we've just been, or I guess our culture is now changing a little bit with the rise of the holistic mindset, but synthetic vitamins are just very cheap and easily made, industrial made, and so it's no wonder that we've become habituated to like just paying a few cents for our synthetic vitamins per day, and so what we are about is really philosophically this food-based holistic approach where it's not just your prenatal vitamin that you're needing to care about, but like what else are you putting in your body? What else are you eating? How are you in the world, relating and tending to your body, mind, and soul. And so I think it's great that, consumers and other women are having a kind of elevated awareness about the holistic nature of fertility and pregnancy and parenthood now.
Absolutely, absolutely. So going back to the idea of quality, are there some signs that someone can look for if they decide that a capsule is what's most convenient, it's what's most accessible? Are there any things that they can look at on the label that will kind of give them like a clue that this is a decent product? Are there any sort of quick tips that you have for that?
Yeah, I think there are. Often if a product is been certified by a third party, that can be helpful. This is something that's a recommendation in the world of supplements, but it's actually not a requirement. So the FDA won't go around and go to Target and pull vitamins off the shelf and test if the nutrients that are in that vitamin are in the pill. I think sometimes we have that perception. Of course, if it says it on the label, it's in the pill, and that's not always the case. So there are a lot of third-party certifying bodies that will independently test vitamins. It's a Google search or two away. But often if the company has done that third-party testing, you'll see it on the website or on the label. The other thing to look for that's maybe more nuanced and specific is the forms of the vitamin. So if we talk about iron again, iron comes in many different forms, and some are more easily absorbed and some are more harsh on the stomach than others. So for example, iron on a supplement facts panel will have to have in parentheses next to it the form that it comes in. So one form is elemental iron. Another form is like ferrous iron. Elemental iron or elemental calcium often just means the iron sort of naked by itself as it's found as an existing element. That's often the harshest form of iron, which is the most poorly absorbed. So there are better forms of iron. The most probably gentle on the stomach form of iron is a form called ferrous gluconate. That just means that the iron is attached to an amino acid, which is sort of how iron is found in foods, right? If you eat a piece of chicken breast, it's found with protein or amino acids, much more gently absorbed on the stomach. Not often as highly absorbed as the bare elemental iron, but I think the goal with the prenatal isn't just the best absorption, it's sort of what works with your body. And iron and other minerals and nutrients found with amino acids or macronutrients often mean we're going to work better with your body, be better absorbed over time, and be gentler. So looking for forms of minerals like iron that are chelated, CHELATED, which means they're attached to amino acids. That's going to improve absorption and make them gentler in almost every case. Chelated minerals are more expensive and often found in the more premium prenatals, as opposed to ones that you might see that are sort of seem more generic. And I would think a doctor would be helpful here too. But there are good resources online of people that talk about the pros and cons of different prenatals and their forms. And this goes back to why all of our vitamins and minerals are in food form. We tried to get as close as we could to replicating. If you could consume one meal and it had all those vitamins and minerals in a meal, can we try to put that into 10 to ensure that they work with your body and are gentlest?
Okay, I think I'm gonna have to put her down.
Okay, fair. Bye, little one. Thank you for visiting. I mean, the cheeks.
She's literally made of 10.
She's 10.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm still breastfeeding, so I just can't believe it. Look at this. I can't believe it. So nice to see you, Kendra. I'll let Behzad take over from here.
Okay, bye for now. That was a beautiful segue, actually. So Hannah touched on the importance of taking TEND before, during, and after, or any prenatal before, during, and after. How far in advance would you recommend someone take a prenatal before actively starting to try to conceive?
Yeah. So the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, as well as the American Pregnancy Association, recommend 3 months before conception. Of course, often we don't know when that exact conception event or date is. So I would usually say it's even 3 months before trying, because it's possible that a couple could conceive very early when they're trying. Sometimes you're obviously not even trying. That's the case for up to a third of couples. So I think women, if they're active with their partners and they could become pregnant, I would recommend taking a prenatal vitamin, which is very much like your typical multivitamin, but has nutrients in some cases at higher levels to support that pregnancy. So 3 months beforehand is sort of the recommended window. But I would say, again, if couples are active and they could become pregnant, that they should consider switching from a standard multivitamin to a prenatal. We were taking prenatals, meaning Hannah, about 6 months before I think we started trying, just to sort of prepare her body. And that is something that the vitamin does do. It prepares your body, and it helps. Even some of the fat soluble vitamins can be stored 3 to 6 months in advance to prepare you for when conception and pregnancy does decide to pop up and arrive. So I think before conception, I would recommend 3 to 6 months or even longer for couples that are sexually active and could become pregnant.
Lovely. And after giving birth, how long for that?
Yeah, so I think there's kind of 2 reasons primarily to consider continuing to take a prenatal after pregnancy, after birth. One is just the mother's recovery. So in the delivery process, and this was the case for us, women lose fluids, they lose blood, they lose nutrients in that process. Most notably, they lose a lot of iron because you lose a lot of fluid and blood in that process. So it can be tough to recover strictly from diet alone in that stage of life, and the recovery can take time. So, some people report not feeling the same for months, if not years. And of course, pregnancy does sort of in a miraculous way change someone's body. So part of it is for postpartum recovery is why a lot of doctors will also recommend continuing to take a prenatal vitamin. Secondly, and just as important, is if women have the option and they are breastfeeding, of course, where does breast milk come from? But from the mother herself. And this is sort of a funky fact that I share, and it sort of blew Hannah's mind the first time I shared it with her, is that breast milk is really just the mother's blood. So the mammary gland, this is amazing to me. Even sort of as a guy, it's weird that I'm so into this, but this blows my mind. And I think it's obvious, but I think when I ponder it, my mind is blown anew each time, which is that breast milk is just blood that's been filtered through the mammary gland, and the baby's literally just drinking what was in the mother's blood. Like, breast milk is filtered blood. What does that mean? That means whatever was in the mom's blood, for better or for worse, gets transferred into the breast milk. Not one for one. There is some filtering and selectivity that goes on. Obviously, breast milk is different in composition than blood. But if that mom had nutrients in her blood at the time of breastfeeding, they'll transfer to the milk. So this is why, especially if women are breastfeeding, and Hannah is still taking Tend to this day because she's still breastfeeding, we recommend emphasizing diet and a holistic approach to taking a prenatal, even in that breastfeeding postpartum season, because the nutrients in the mom's blood and body are what are nourishing the baby. For some women, that's not an option for different reasons. They're feeding formula, and formula could be a whole nother conversation. I think there's some great formula options that are out there, but the baby is relying on the mom as much, if not more, after he or she is born. And that's where the mom continuing to nourish herself, and not only nourish herself from a dietary perspective, but rest and stress relief, which can cause, cortisol running through your veins, can actually show up in the breast milk. So mothers that are able to sort of, I think, have a community that's supportive, and sort of be able to have some space and time to rest and recover in that season, I think just as, if not more important than the nutritional piece, and in a way that I think is hard to study, that can transfer over into the baby and into the family. If the mom feels rested and equipped and is encouraged in that season, I'm sure that has positive effects for the baby that are immeasurable beyond just nutrition.
Oh, I love that answer. I again, thoroughly appreciate just the intentionality and the I don't even know if I have a word for it, but just the deep understanding of the fact that we are just this mishmash of so many different things. And there are so many different things that impact our health and our well-being. And we nourish ourselves with other things beyond nutrients, and nutrients are incredibly important, but there's more to it. And your company, I think, really, you can tell that that is like the lifeblood of Tend, is that you really do care for the whole person. And so thank you for that answer. Thank you for all of your answers. This has been incredibly informative. And so much of what you shared, I remember reading in a few like articles or pieces on your website. So there are definitely things that people can learn just by visiting your website that can help them choose Tend for themselves or choose another prenatal that they may decide would be a good fit for them. So I'd love it if you can tell us where we can learn more about Tend and all of the other resources that you make available.
Sure. So you can check us out on social media, handle being at Tend Prenatal. And the website is also tendprenatal.com. People who reach out on social or on the website, you know, we look like we're a big company from the outside, but it's primarily Hannah and myself and a few others that help us with projects here and there. So if you reach out on the website with a question for me, I'll be the one reading that email, or Hannah, and we're happy to get back to people. And the goal, really like your work, Kendra, is to build a community and to help people feel a little more supported, however we can equip them along the way in this process. Community for us was so important. Our pregnancy journey was 2 or 3 years long, which for some people isn't so long, as I know some people have a much longer journey even than that before having a baby. So we're here as a resource, and we love to talk about not only nutrition, but just sort of a holistic approach to the season of life, really, which is pregnancy and postpartum.
Thank you. Thank you. I will make sure to link to everything that you just shared down in the description box below. And again, I have thoroughly appreciated your time, and tell Hannah I said thank you as well.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Kendra, for everything you do. And we love your philosophy and ethos and just your presence in the space. And I think we look forward to more conversations like these.